Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, my reactions to GoodReads' most popular horror books of the last 5 years. So GoodReads has recently put up a list of the 78 most popular horror books of the last 5 years according to GoodReads users. I don't know why it's 78. That feels like a very weird number. But anyway, that's how many there are. Somebody sent me a link to that list and I had a look through it and thought it was quite interesting and thought it'd be fun to go through it on the channel and talk about my reactions to each of those books. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Okay, so here we go. You can see, embarrassingly, how many unread messages and notifications I've got on GoodReads. Anyway, let's get into the list. So, the first few, as you can see, I've read. So, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I read it a few years ago. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun and interesting take on the Gothic genre, which is a genre I typically enjoy, with a nice twist. Definitely some creepy stuff in this book. I enjoyed it a lot. Next up we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, which I really didn't like. I've talked about this book on the channel before. I thought it was tricksy. I thought it had quite an unpleasant twist towards the end. And whilst I thought some of the concepts in it were interesting and the use of illustrations in it was good, I really didn't enjoy it overall. Next then, The Institute by Stephen King, which again I've talked about on the channel. I did not enjoy this. So one of my least favourite King books of recent years, to be honest with you. King does this thing in his books where he typically has two stories that he's trying to tell. And I think when his books work really well, it's when you can't tell that there are two stories. In The Institute, you can definitely tell that there were two stories, and I really felt like it didn't work as a result. Okay, next row then is three books that I haven't read. So first one, Bunny by Mona Awad. I've been meaning to read this for ages. I just haven't got to it yet. It sounds like an interesting book. It sounds like a disturbing book, which is definitely something I like. I think some people really like this book. Some people really don't. So I hope to get to it at some point. Next up, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I think this is the only one of Grady Hendrix' traditionally published books that I haven't read yet. I've been meaning to get to it for ages. I've heard good things about it, so definitely one I will read at some point, probably reasonably soon. Next up then, we have Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I'm not a big fan of Riley Sager. I haven't read this one. I probably won't. I've read, I think, 2 of his books, maybe 2 or 3, and I haven't particularly enjoyed any of them. Again, I think he's one of those kind of modern thriller writers who relies too much on tricks. And whilst his books can be quite enjoyable and suspenseful, I'm not a big fan overall. Okay, next row then, 3 that I've read. The Final Girl Support Group, my least favourite Grady Hendrix book. I think I'm right in saying that this is one he wrote fairly early on in his writing career, which hadn't been published, and when he had a bit of a gap between books, the publishers wanted to pull something from his back catalogue that they could publish, so they pulled out the Final Girl Support Group. I just felt like the central concept didn't really work. So kind of fun at times, had some interesting stuff to say about horror movies, but didn't love it. Next to that, another Grady Hendrix book, and one I really, really enjoyed. So, How to Sell a Haunted House. I've reviewed this one on the channel. I just thought this was a really fun horror book. A great kind of central monster to it, but also some really interesting kind of family dynamics type stuff. I had a really good time with How to Sell a Haunted House. Next then, Holly by Stephen King. I really enjoyed this. I really like Holly Gibney as a character. I know a lot of people have problems with the depiction of COVID in this book, but I thought it was interestingly done. And I think it's useful for books to reflect on, things that have happened to all of us like that. So yeah, I enjoyed Holly, enjoyed the villains. I think Holly Gibney is a great character, so definitely a hit for me. Next, we have a mix of ones I've read and ones I haven't read. So The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward, I did not enjoy. I thought it was a bit silly, a bit over the top, a bit ridiculous. I felt like all the different threads didn't really come together that well, and I've just found it unconvincing. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, I've been meaning to read. I do have a copy of it digitally, so need to get to that at some point. And again, I've heard really good things about it. What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. So I've read 2 T. Kingfisher books at this point. This was definitely my favourite. I thought it was really, really well done. So an interesting, kind of retelling of Poe, but really creepy at times. And I just really enjoyed the characters in this book as well. I thought it was very well constructed. Next up then, 3 that I've read, and a bit of a mixed bag here. So The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham-Jones I thought was fantastic. Definitely a challenging book. The way it's written is quite challenging, but I thought it was a great read. I enjoyed it enormously. I read it with a book club, most of the other members of which were not horror fans, but certainly the ones who read it did get something out of it. If It Bleeds by King, which is a collection of novellas. I thought the Holly Gibney one in this, which is If It Bleeds, I enjoyed. The other ones I didn't enjoy quite as much. I thought it was a bit of a mixed bag for King, to be honest with you. Definitely not one of my favourite of his recent books. And Later, also about King, I really didn't enjoy. So I've enjoyed the majority of the books King has done for Hard Case Crime, but Later I just felt was like not terribly convincing, and there's a twist towards the end which, if you've read it, you'll know, which I just thought was really uncomfortable and strange. Next up then we have A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, which I'll be honest, I've not even heard of, so definitely haven't read that. Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, I started and didn't get on with. So I really love The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. I think it's a wonderful book. But Imaginary Friend, it's really long. It's like over 500 pages long, I think. And I just felt like I just wasn't getting into it. I wasn't gripped by it enough to continue with it. Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez, another very long book, but I thought this was fantastic. I thought it was a book that definitely justified its length. So a weird, uncomfortable horror novel that touches on the political situation in Argentina, particularly in the 80s. Really effective, really moving. I thought it was a phenomenal experience. The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, I haven't read. I'm pretty sure I do have a digital copy of that, but haven't got to that one yet. My Heart's a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham-Jones, again I really enjoyed, so an interesting take on the slasher genre. I know some people don't like the way that Stephen Graham-Jones kind of interwove discussion of slasher movies into this book, but I thought it was really effectively done, and I did enjoy it a lot. Rouge by Mona Awad, I didn't particularly enjoy. There was some stuff about this book I thought was interesting and good, but overall I just found it a little bit confusing, a little bit muddled. Didn't love that one. Next up, Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I really didn't like this one either, I'm afraid. It was an interesting concept. So the concept is there's this woman who at night turns into a dog. So kind of a werewolf type story. But for me, it just fell flat. I didn't enjoy it. It felt like one of those books that's trying to say something, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was trying to say. The September House by Carissa Orlando. Again, I've heard really good things about, but haven't read that yet. The Shadows by Alex North. I think this is the second book in a series. I want to say I've certainly read another book by Alex North, which I think was called The Whisper Man, which was really creepy and I enjoyed. So The Shadows is one I will probably get to at some point. A few I haven't read next then. So House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. Heard great things about, but haven't read that one yet. The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. I read another book by her, which may end up being on this list as well, which I didn't particularly enjoy. And All's Well by Mona Awad is one by Mona Awad I don't think I've heard much about. All the buzz seems really to be about Bunny and Rouge more recently. Next up, Plain Bad Heroines by Emily Danforth. Again, heard good things about this, but haven't read it yet. Slewfoot by Brom, definitely on my list to read at some point. Keep hearing great things about this book. Feels like it's a book that needs to be read in the physical form because of the illustration, so that is one I would like to get to at some point. Lone Women by Victor Laval, I've reviewed on the channel. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. A really interesting mix of different genres. So, the Western, the horror genre, but with a really strong kind of central female character. I thought it was fantastically well done. The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, another one by her I haven't read yet. Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, I thought was a really interesting book. I'm not really sure if I'd classify it as horror. It's more kind of weird sci-fi, I would have said. But fantastically enjoyable. So the concept of this book is that the Ku Klux Klan are literally monsters from another dimension, and it's about a team, kind of mismatched team of people going up against them. Just a really fun, pulpy adventure story, but with a decent political heart as well. Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. Again, I've heard great things about this. I do have a copy of it digitally. Need to get to it at some point. You Like It Darker by Stephen King, so his most recent short story collection. Reviewed this on the channel. I thought it was really good. Not all the stories are great. There's a fantastic novella, which again is one I would have liked to have seen published as a hard case crime book. I'm now blanking on the name of it. Danny something or other, Danny Coughlin, I think. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that collection a lot. I had a good time with it. Simone St. James is one of those authors I've heard a lot about over the years, but still haven't read anything by. And similarly with Tananarive Dew, I haven't read any of her books. I do have The Reformatory digitally. I've heard fantastic things about it. She's an author who's definitely on my list to get to soon. Next up, Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar. So the only Chismar books I've read so far have been the Gwendy books, which I have for the most part enjoyed. So we'll probably get to this one at some point, but if I'm honest, it's not high up on my list to get to. Devolution by Max Brooks, which is a Bigfoot novel I really enjoyed. I had a really good time with this one. It's just a fun kind of monster book. Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. Rachel Harrison's another author I've heard so many good things about but haven't read yet. I do have a copy of Black Sheep. I need to get to it at some point. And I've got at least one other thing by her as well. Silver Nitrate by Silvia Marino Garcia. I didn't enjoy as much as the one I've now forgotten the name of that I talked about at the start, Mexican Gothic. But I thought it was interesting. So an interesting book about kind of cursed film, which is always something I enjoy. Great central characters. I really enjoyed the couple of central characters at the centre of the book. But yeah, it wasn't for me as good as Mexican Gothic. The Lost Village by Camilla Sten, I haven't heard of, I'll confess. And similarly, I haven't heard of The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. She seems to have a lot of books on this list, doesn't she? I certainly, the book I read by her, which I'm hoping it was by her, and I hope it will be later on this list, felt a lot more like a thriller than a horror novel to me. House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, I don't think I've heard of. The Drowning Kind, I haven't heard of. Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth, I've heard great things about, and again, I do have a copy of that, so I need to get to that at some point. Sign Here by Claudia Love, I have not heard of. Am I saying that? Oh, sorry, Claudia Lux. I couldn't quite read the strange font there. So yeah, not heard of that one. It does look quite interesting, but yeah. The Book of Excellence by Chuck Wendig, I haven't read. I have read some of Wendig's early books and really enjoyed those. I do have a copy of, what's it called? Is it called Travellers by him? This big kind of post-apocalyptic book. So hoping to read that soon. And if I enjoy that, I'll probably pick up the Book of Accidents as well. I've definitely heard good things about that. The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher is the other T. Kingfisher book I've read. I didn't enjoy this as much as What Moves the Dead, but it was still a fun read and had a great central character as well, and a great dog character too, which I always enjoy. Mary by Nat Cassidy, I've reviewed on the channel. I thought it was phenomenal. Really, really enjoyed it. One of my favourite recent horror books, if I'm honest. A really interesting book that weaves together a load of different kind of horror tropes, but does it very successfully. Cackle by Rachel Harrison, another one by her that I haven't read, but I would like to get to at some point. Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. So I heard loads of good buzz about this when it first came out, and I've subsequently read S.A. Barnes's follow-up book, which I'm now, I think it's called Ghost Station, which I didn't enjoy at all. So Dead Silence was high on my list to read, but having not enjoyed Ghost Station, I think it's one I'll probably give a miss to. Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. Again, heard fantastic things about this. I do have a copy of it digitally. I need to get to it soon. We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. I've not heard of. So no thoughts on that. Jackal by Erin Adams, I've heard really good things about, and again I do have a digital copy of that, so we'll hopefully get to that soon. The next couple are more that I haven't heard of. So Never Whistle at Night which is an indigenous dark fiction anthology, which is interesting because I think it said at the top this was the best horror novels, but this is clearly an anthology. So I think I've heard good things about that one, but yeah, not one that I've got. So not currently on my list of things to read. Bloodline by Jess Lowry, not heard of that one. The Thing Between Us by Gus Marino, I've heard fantastic things about. I did ask for it for Christmas a little while ago from my parents, and their local bookshop couldn't get hold of a copy of it. So I do need to track down a copy of that myself. Comfort Me with Apples and Summer Suns, I don't think I've heard of. Maybe no, I have heard of Summer Suns, but yeah, haven't read that one yet. Comfort Me with Apples, I haven't heard of at all, I'm afraid. So if you know about that one, do let me know in the comments. Don't Fear the Reaper, which is the follow-up to My Heart is a Chainsaw. I definitely need to read. I need to finish that trilogy. They're all available on Kobo Plus, so I am going to read them at some point. But yeah, just haven't got to them yet. Next up, Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine. Not heard of that. We Spread by Ian Reid. So I've heard loads of buzz about Ian Reid's other book, which I now can't remember the name of. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments. And I have been meaning to read that. I'd like to try him as an author. He seems to be someone that people have quite mixed reactions to. Some people seem to really like him. Some people don't get on with his books at all. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try him at some point. But whether I'll try this one or the other one, which I can't remember the name of, we shall see. My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. Again, I haven't heard of, I'm afraid. Here's the other Jennifer McMahon book, so My Darling Girl. So yeah, I didn't love this. It definitely feels more like a thriller than a horror book. Again, it felt a bit tricksy. I just didn't love it. So yeah, a bit of a miss for me, and I can't see me trying Jennifer McMahon again. Natural Booty by Ling Ling Huang. I haven't heard of that one, I'm afraid. Incidents Around the House by Malaman. I've heard good things about this. I've only read, I'm ashamed to say, Bird Box by Josh Malaman, which I really enjoyed. I do have one of his other books on the shelf back there, but not this one. So yeah, definitely an author I need to try a bit more of. The Girl in Red by Christina Henry. I don't remember hearing that much about. I definitely know the author's name. I have heard good things about some of her other books, I think. I do love that cover as well. But yeah, not one that's on my list to read at the moment. The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Core. I really enjoyed. It's a very weird, very confusing book. It feels like deliberately nightmarish and dreamlike, but I thought it was really enjoyable. So Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay, I haven't read yet. I've read 2 of his books. So Cabin at the End of the World, I thought was okay, but I didn't love it. A Head Full of Ghosts, I thought was fantastic. I really enjoyed that a lot. So I'm definitely going to try more by him. Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina, I'm afraid I haven't heard of. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, I didn't love, so I did review that one on the channel recently. I thought it had some interesting elements to it, but overall I didn't really feel like it hung together well. Gwendy's Final Task by King and Chismar is on my list to read, so I've read the first 2 Gwendy books. Enjoyed both of those, so looking forward to reading that one soon. Mallory by Josh Malaman, which I think is the sequel to Bird Box. I haven't read yet. I'm not sure if I want to go back to the world of Bird Box. I thought Bird Box did what it did really, really well, but I'm not sure I necessarily need to read more in that. So when I do pick up Malaman, I'll probably try something else rather than that one. Manhunt by Gretchen Falcon Martin, I've reviewed on the channel. I thought it was a really interesting book, really graphic, really angry, really powerful. I thought it was great. The Insects by TJ Payne, I haven't heard of, I'm afraid. The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. I love this cover. I keep on hearing good things about this book. I definitely need to read it. Definitely need to read that one. Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. I've heard really good things about this one as well. I think it's kind of a podcast type story, and I enjoy that kind of found footage style of horror. So yeah, I will definitely give that one a try at some point, I think. Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. I'm pretty sure I've got this digitally. I quite like Darcy Coates books when I'm in the mood for them. I've read 2 or 3 by her. I instantly forget them when I finish them, but I do think they're quite fun reads when you are going through them. So it looks like I've got to the end of the list. So that's my take on GoodReads' 78 most popular horror books from the last 5 years. Do let me know in the comments if there are any I haven't read that you think I should prioritise. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.